I was born a poor black child into a single-parent family. My father left me and my mother when I was only 2 months old. His mother was ill and he returned to his place of birth in Vancouver, Canada. Poverty blighted my childhood, but still, our mother gave us all the love we needed to grow and love others in return. Us, being my sister and I, conceived by another man. While we had nothing of substance, second-hand clothes, shit and butter for dinner and not one single holiday abroad growing up, I did get a Commodore VIC-20 computer once for Christmas. When I excitedly told my friends at school about it, I did lie and say that I got a 15K extension RAM with it, hiding my ignorance that the Commodore VIC-20 had the lowest memory capacity computer on the market. What did you get for Christmas? I got a VIC-20 computer. Oh cool. Did you get the 15K RAM extension to go with it? With the 3K memory space it comes with, it would be a useless piece of shit if you haven't. Haha, yeah, of course I got the 15K extension RAM with it. Ha ha. I watched with envy as my friends were brought the latest trendy trainers, designer shirts, and bikes. I watched with envy as fathers hugged their sons goodnight, and I watched with envy when my school friends went on school events and trips, which my mother simply couldn't afford to send me on. But I never allowed that envy to blight me. Instead, it made me more determined to lead an adulthood of wealth, health, and happiness. I learned the valuable life lesson very early, that if I wanted anything, I would have to get it myself. No one was going to give it to me on a silver platter, let alone a paper plate. So I did wake up at 4:30 a.m., getting washed and dressed in the kitchen with all the cooker rings on to give me warmth, to start work as a morning cleaner at Tesco on Boundary Road at 5 a.m. I did go to school as a good boy and then work an hour and a half afterwards as a school cleaner, sweeping and mopping the classroom floors, which I and my fellow students had spent all day roaming. I did work Friday nights and Saturdays at the co-op store and I relished the first, combined, wage of £100, which I remembered spending on new shoes and clothes for my cousin's wedding. I learned from an early age that I had to work, and work hard, to support myself and my family. I remember fondly working for Pete the Packy, who owned the corner shop, lugging stock from the shelves of the local Booker's store into his car, and then out of his car into the shop, earning enough money to afford a packet of 20 cigarettes for my mother. I once painted his house, and first saw the silhouette of a beautiful lady's body, as his wife used to walk around in her flimsy white nightie, clearly wearing nothing underneath. I remember averting my glance from the dark patch of her black pubic hair, clearly visible through the thin white material. Oh, how she smiled at me, lingering longer than necessary, exchanging polite pleasantries, standing in front of me looking divine. Ample breasts, curvy hips, lingering black hair and a smile on her face. Oh, the memories. Be it doing the odd jobs for Pete, paper rounds, wheeling and dealing on the school playgrounds, or working second and third jobs, I was determined to lead a life of adulthood, free from poverty and disappointment. I was all set to break away from my childhood and lead a new life of adventure, when I ran away to the south of France at 17 years old, grabbing the opportunity of working for my aunts and uncles, who had pooled their money to buy a mansion in Les Salles, a mere 20 miles south from the castle city of Carcassonne. My dreams of becoming a Frenchman were dashed when I received a letter from my mother, asking me to return to home, because my sister had fallen pregnant at only 14 years old. I was gutted and distraught, but did as my mother asked, returned home, got a job working as a fruit machine engineer working for Brent Leisure, and for the next few years, dutifully handed over my hard-earned money to my mother to pay for nappies, food, and clothes for my niece. And then when the dust had settled and my family were doing well, I escaped again, but this time to Houston, America. It had always been my dream to travel the world, and by God, nothing was going to stop me, especially not a pregnant sister. With 6 months lived experience of living in Katy, Houston, Texas, of working as a bowling alley attendant, driving a 1977 Chevy and dating a gorgeous American girl called Ginger, I returned home with yet more dreams and aspirations to fulfill. Next up was 6 months working at Butlin's holiday camp at Bognor Regis as a barman. Having a sexy co-worker bounce up and down on me on the first night, working at Butlin's aged 19 turned out to be the best 6 months of my life. Shagging both staff and customers, the world of casual sex opened up to me and I haven't looked back since. Smashing the Manhattan bar and mastering the cocktail bar, I went from working at Butlin's to flying to Manhattan, working as a camp counselor at Camp Kawago in upstate New York. One of only 3 charity-run summer camps in all of America, I got to meet deprived kids from the Bronx and gave them an experience which both of us would never forget. After camp end, and with an Amtrak pass in hand, I spent the next few months traveling the eastern seaboard of the United States of America. Fulfilling lifelong dreams of going to Disneyland, Florida Keys, Miami, Charlottesville, Washington, Boston, New York, Montreal, Toronto, Buffalo and more, I was living the dream and making the most out of life. I returned home a happy man, spending my 21st birthday in the States, and relishing the experience of handing over my ID to an American barmaid, legally allowed to drink in America for the first time. Even my sister falling pregnant for a second time, by a different father, didn't damp my spirits. I was a new man. I had proved I was able to motivate myself to go abroad and survive whatever life threw at me, without calling home for help. Not that my mother could offer me help, even if I asked. And then I went to Hong Kong. I was on a roll and I didn't want to lose my newfound independence. Anything to get away from my mom, sister and 2 nieces. This is my life and I'm entitled to live it as I see fit. Living in Hong Kong from 1994 to 1996, traveling Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia and more, in the company of my besties Rob and Alec. I couldn't have wished for a better life. I had grown into the man I'd always wanted to be, and approaching my mid-20s, the world was in the palm of my hands. And then I got another letter from my mother, saying Emma, my sister, had got her committed, asking if I could come home and sort it all out. And as a dutiful son that I am, I did. Then I joined the army as a Royal Military Policeman. I'd always planned on joining the police force and it was the driving force that kept me on the straight and narrow, so to speak. Watching the Brit movie classic Scum was also a driving force keeping me on the straight and narrow. The thought of being sent to Borstal and being raped by fellow inmates put the fear of God in me, and I made double sure not to break any laws. All I needed to become a policeman was 5 olivals and a clean criminal record. Easy peasy. I had a bit of a wobble when I got 1 olival in art, which meant me wising up and knuckling down for an extra year at 6th form college, but I was pleased enough to leave education with 1 olival and 4 GCSEs. But hey, why join the civilian police force, when I could join the military police force and fire guns too? I remember walking past the Army recruitment office on Queens Road, Brighton, and saying to myself, why not, give it a shot. I passed the entry test, needing 73% and above, and Bob's your uncle. Before I knew it, I was running around the perimeter of Pirbright Army Base and getting fitted up to start Phase 1 training. Thanks for listening to Part 1 of my podcast, I Will Prevail. Stay tuned for Part 2, coming soon.